As attendees are joining, take a couple of minutes. Okay, I believe we have a number of commissioners and community members joining us now. During our info session, we're happy to have the Deputy Mayor for Planning, Economic and Development, one of my all-time favorite and best to work with organizations in DC government, but no bias here. The Deputy Mayor has held a number of roles, including Chief of Staff for the Mayor, and has worked in prior administrations. Tonight, he's going to cover the Mayor's budget, the importance of some key items to the community, and how we can help. And I'm sure he'll take some Q&A. Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for having me, Chairman Turner, and for the commissioners, thank you for making this time. And like you said, I do want to leave some time for questions. So I'm going to go over a brief overview. If I go too long, please jump in, let me know to stop, to leave the time for questions. So I want to make sure we have that. So what Mayor Bowser has put forth is the most equitable budget in the history of DC home rule. It's a $19.5 million budget. And one of the bright spots that I see is that our revenue actually has exceeded pre-pandemic levels. That means we can make a lot of key investments in our residents and in our city. So really excited to be with you tonight to talk about all of these different investments. And, you know, despite the pandemic, Mayor Bowser and DC are really on a roll. So, you know, we cut the ribbon on a new 801 East men's shelter in Ward 8. That allows us to really kind of rethink how we treat individuals experiencing homelessness. You know that in Mayor Bowser's tenure, she has driven down family homelessness by 73%. And now we really have to do the same for individuals experiencing homelessness. And what 801 East does is it actually allows us to have a blueprint for how future facilities should look, which is a mix of services at all barriers of entry. And it allows us to actually make sure that we can help folks get that transition into housing. So excited about that. Also excited about what Mayor Bowser announced just a couple of weeks ago, which was a income support. So cash assistance, $900 a month to new and expectant mothers in wards 5, 7, and 8. That program provides $900 a month of cash assistance. And we are proud to start with that subgroup and work with Martha's Table, which had done cash assistance in the pandemic, to really be DC government's first pilot into cash assistance. So excited about that. And then really, you know, one of the things that the mayor has been certain is important is making sure we get people trained for not just good jobs, but also careers. So you'll hear a lot of talk nationally about infrastructure. And since the mayor launched the DC Infrastructure Academy, 1,900 residents have been through the academy and been placed in jobs that lead to careers in infrastructure. So really excited about that. I talked to you about family homelessness. Also, you know, we're proud that we've entered the pandemic with one of the lowest uninsured resident rates in the nation. That meant that our residents could be connected with care in a way that other places might not enjoy. So what we want to do is a couple of things with this Fair Shop budget for 2023. One of the first and foremost priorities of the mayor is the public safety of our residents and of our city. And so she's made a couple of key investments, some on the public safety side and some on the jobs, opportunity, and human services side. I'll start there with one investment that she's really excited about, which is the life coaches that will work alongside our gun violence prevention coordinator, as well as our Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, to actually make sure that when they engage people and do the hard work that violence interrupters do, that there's somebody that can be handed off to that can really work with people to chart a path and stay with those individuals who are justice involved, to make sure that they have a coach to get them all the challenges that they faced and divert them from the justice system. So you all have heard about the report that said there's anywhere between 250 and 500 people that will really mean or really be the root of a lot of the gun violence that's in the city. So what the life coaches will do is have an intense interaction with those individuals to make sure that they are put on a path that keeps them away from the justice system. So we're really excited about the life coaches. Another opportunity that the mayor is really excited about, and this is actually for this year, is an additional $13 million in recreational activities. This is meant to really do a couple things. One, make sure there's just more opportunities for recreation. Longer hours at some recreation centers, grants for community-based organizations that do recreation, as well as, and this is something obviously the mayor is very proud of, 1,200 new spots for girls in sports, new sports activities for girls to get involved in. So that's some of the work that we're doing, in addition to the work that we're doing with building blocks on the jobs, opportunity, and human services side. But on the public safety side, in terms of law enforcement, the mayor does have investments that will both hire more women and more DC residents as police officers, as well as retain our police officers. This will put us on a path to 4,000 officers, which we have had as a district policy some years ago. We want to get back towards that. But what it really means, and don't get lost in that number, because what it really means is this is the important number. We were at 3,800 officers just about 2 years ago. In that time, we've dropped to 3,500. And with the investments that the mayor has put in place, we'd be able to hire 347 more officers. Again, with a focus on women and DC residents as those new officers. But we also have retention tools within the MPD budget to make sure that we don't lose as many officers as we have been, so that we can actually stabilize the number of officers in the department, as well as make sure that we grow the number. And there's 4 reasons we want to grow the number of officers. One is response times. We have seen with the fewer number of officers that our response time for priority 1 calls, that's a call for 911 type of support, that our response times have actually increased by 90 seconds. And that 90 seconds can be critical in situations when police are responding. So our first reason is to improve response times. Our second is to have more presence in neighborhoods. And you probably hear from your residents, when they see the officers, they feel a little bit safer. And when there's more officers in the neighborhood, officers can actually do more community policing and engage with residents. Number 3, we want to make sure that we can both make cases and close cases. So we need the officers to be able to actually take the time to investigate, to make sure that what might start as a lesser crime doesn't evolve into a greater crime later. And then finally, to be prepared for a post-January 6th posture. We've seen it as of late, folks who come here for a First Amendment activity who sometimes will go beyond that First Amendment activity. And we need MPD to be present to protect the city for residents, visitors, and businesses alike. So that's a big investment, big part of the budget. And this also is the largest budget in terms of education spending. $2.2 billion to make sure that we have high intensity tutoring to make sure that our students can catch up from the learning loss that they experienced during the pandemic. So that's one of the new initiatives that's funded in this historic $2.2 billion investment. And there's some good news for Ward 1. In this budget, there's specifically $27 million to advance Park Morton, $25 million to support revitalization of Bruce Monroe, $99 million for the renovation of Tubman Elementary, $110 million to take city center or to create a city center middle school at the old Banneker High School. And then $64 million for Adams Education Campus, $12 million for Parkview Recreation Center, $21 million for the renovation of Rita Bright Family and Youth Center. So those are just some of the investments that are happening in both our housing categories and our education and community facilities. And there's big investments in making sure that we invest in our transportation and the environment, including $102 million to bring alleys into a state of good repair across the district, and $114 million to rehabilitate, reconstruct, and maintain our sidewalks citywide. And just for roads alone in Ward 1, $23.5 million. We also have a very important project with Howard University, and that's building a new hospital. So you know about the tax abatement, which will help them advance that. You've probably heard recently about federal funding that's going to help support a new Howard University hospital. But the District of Columbia is going to invest $25 million into the public infrastructure to be prepared for that new hospital. So those are a couple of the highlights of the budget. I want to leave time for question and answer. And I know there's some members of the team who are putting some information into the chat. And if there's something that we haven't answered or something you want to talk about or a suggestion, would love to hear that at this time. So I'll turn it back to you, Chairman.
First, we'll take questions from commissioners if you'll raise your hand, and we'll also be monitoring the chat for questions there. I'll start with the first question. As we redevelop public housing and redevelop our public properties, the Reeves Center, S Street, THEMS and MPD on U Street, we always do a set aside for affordability. In that affordability, maybe we should have a set aside for first responders to encourage first responders into these spaces as well. That way we're adding officers into where we're increasing population as well. And I think that would be very useful. As we're doing all of these redevelopments, we have to remember the people at the sites, but we also have to find a way to get to completion. Park Morton and Bruce Monroe has been sitting there for far too long, held up by far too many issues that should never have existed. And everyone is suffering from these properties not being redeveloped and us not getting to the goal line. At some point, we have to find a new way of tackling this so we can get redevelopment done more quickly. As our Columbia Heights Village, for example, will be coming online. It's leaving its HUD, as well as Faircliff East and West. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of redevelopment in Ward 1, and we have to make sure that we manage it properly. And we see DMPED as while there are a number of agencies involved, DMPED needs to be the lead here. So we have coordinated looks of what we need in communities and managing the plan to the comp plan, basically. So there was a lot of comments in there. Would you like to respond?
Yeah, no, I actually appreciate it. So one of the things that I did when I became deputy mayor for planning and economic development was I actually made sure that the agencies that have a focus on housing, that we actually meet each month to make sure that we are aligned on some of the very issues that you're talking about. As there's sometimes projects that one of us will have a bigger role in than another agency, but we all have to work on them together. And so we meet every first Friday of every month to go over just what you're talking about. Make sure that project by project, we're all helping one another along. As an example, for one project, you may have a site that the housing authority has that in the future land use map has actually been given more density. And then the process to actually capture that the path usually goes through or it goes along with the Office of Planning. And then that project has to be financed. So we have at the table both DEMPED and DHCD, as well as the Housing Finance Agency, all sitting at the table trying to understand the pipeline that we're all pushing through. So I think what you're highlighting is important. The projects take a little bit longer than any of us would like. And so with this coordination, I think we'll be able to get a little bit better at that. One that you raised that we are ready to get started on, but for one resident, is Park Morton. So we want to make sure that the community has long called for the revitalization of Park Morton. We have a plan that can get residents back to the site, but we need to get started. So we've been working with the Housing Authority as they try to make sure that the resident concerns are addressed, but also that we have a pathway to get started. The funding is there. The designs are there. The plans are ready. We just need to get started. So we'll be working on that over the next couple of weeks and months as well.
Thank you. We, in Ward 1, we happen to have at a tactical level, a little bit of a extra resource. Anthony Moore, who's one of our mopers. You probably know Bob Moore, his father, who did a lot of redevelopment in Columbia Heights and led redevelopment. And he's able to help bridge the gap many times between residents. And I just find that such a wonderful asset to have to help us in working with residents and with developers.
Absolutely. So Anthony is a critical member of the team. The other thing I would say is you probably know this, that with our mokers, they usually have a 2-year tour of duty, and then they move on to an agency. And I don't want to get ahead of anybody, but I think when Anthony's 2 years are up, there's probably going to be a spot for him in DEMPED.
That's good to hear. Commissioner Baina.
Hey there. So thanks for being here. And then I have a comment and a question. I have a lot of questions, but I'll keep it brief so other folks can speak. So comment first, you talked about hiring a lot more police officers, and I just would like to say I'm not convinced that hiring more police officers is really going to do anything about the crime issue or public safety, because based on my experience in my SMD, I've seen current officers essentially going into a park and harassing elderly residents. I've seen, police cars parked on the street with the officers in them with their lights on, not walking around, not doing anything. So I'm not really convinced that you're using the officers you have in an effective way currently. And I'm concerned that hiring more will just mean more folks sitting in their cars with their lights on. So I'll leave that as it will. Also,
Commissioner Baina, could you let him know the area that you're talking about?
Lower Columbia Heights. We've spoken about it on these meetings before in the past. I'll also note that I am concerned about the directed recruitment of female officers when there's a history of MPD, other officers sexually harassing female officers as well. So I'll leave that alone. My question, you noted in the budget that there are funds set aside for renovating Rita Bright. Rita Bright is right next to my district. I think it's a really underutilized community resource, and Rita Bright folks, that community have been promised many times that funding is coming to enhance programming, to enhance the physical space. So can you speak more to what is earmarked in the budget for Rita Bright and what that entails?
Yes. So the investment that I was referring to, and appreciate your feedback on public safety as well. The investment as it relates to Rita Bright is actually $21 million of capital funding. So as folks who pay attention to the budget more than others, capital budget is really for the physical building itself. So this $21 million would enable the Department of Parks and Recreation, along with the Department of General Services, to initiate a modernization of the Rita Bright Family and Youth Center. And as you probably know, with our projects, when we do capital projects, we generally do a planning exercise with the community. both the users of the facility as well as the adjacent neighbors. And then that usually takes about a year. And then we go into the construction, which construction can be anywhere from 12 to 24 months. So for this project, there would be a period of engagement led likely by both, or led likely with a combination of DPR and DGS.
Deputy Mayor, isn't this phase 2 of when we put the shelter there? It was to then be the next phase to upgrade Rita Bright and make it a bigger, more inclusive center with the shelter site. I mean, short-term family housing site.
Correct. Yeah. So, and I don't know what year Rita Bright was built. I don't have that note in front of me, but it could use a little bit of sprucing up. And like you alluded to, the short-term family housing is delivered. It's being utilized. And for all of our neighbors, we need to have a Rita Bright that reflects what's happening in terms of capital investment around the city. We need to do it at Rita Bright as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm next on here. Oh, I see Chair Turner popping up. Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor, thank you so much for being here. It's great to hear directly from you. And I know there are a lot of ANCs across the district, so we really appreciate you showing up tonight. On the capital budget, I did have a question on the Banneker Middle School site. And sorry, you said middle school, not elementary first, and then second, what year is that set to begin?
Yeah, I've got to get the budget years for you. Let me see if I can get some help from Anthony to plug that into the chat. But it is a little bit further out in the planning because I know that currently that space is using, or it's currently aligned with swing space. So I think there needs to be a little bit of utilization for that swing purpose. And then just like I mentioned with the other capital project, there'd be some planning, a year of planning. And then for schools, it's 2 years of construction.
Right. Okay.
And then,
sorry.
And one thing to highlight too is DCPS would also lead an exercise on what the programmatic elements of the school are as well.
Okay. And then that'd be a middle school, you said?
Middle school, correct.
Okay, got it. Awesome. And then I just want to put in 2 quick plugs as you receive the council's recommendations and you have conversations with folks and agencies. First, on DPR investments, specifically in summer camp slots. I know that there are investments in increasing spots just district-wide. I would love to see focus on specifically swim space. I know that this week DPR opened up all of their spots for the summer camp, and the swim options were among the most limited, but perhaps the most popular. And had a few conversations with folks in the area, Ward 1 specifically, and said, how can we utilize Banneker's amazing pool? And then how can we utilize, Ward 4's new pool, all of that better to our ability. So that's number 1. And then my second plug would be the quick build implementations from DDOT. So how can we utilize those funds in the best possible way? And perhaps there is a proactive way we could engage ANCs using that specific quick build pot of money. So maybe there's a recommendation portal that we would be able to provide feedback for, or some sort of preference given to ANC recommendations. But I think that's a big opportunity for FY23.
Okay, that would I would like to actually hear more about your thought on that. Quick build can work, because the planning process. I think if we had ANCs engaged on the front end, then all that community engagement that DDOT does, maybe we could shrink that down a little bit. And then, like you said, the DPR spots. So the goal is to actually increase the number of summer spots by 50% for this summer, and then double them next summer. Now that is spots. So that's not necessarily aquatics and swimming. In particular. And swimming was actually, and aquatics were the first ones to open on Monday, right? So we had probably one of the most popular and limited demand go first. So those spots go very quickly.
Of course.
But the good news is that we'll be able to increase those as we kind of increase the whole inventory of spots for this summer by 50% and next summer, hopefully to double that.
Okay, great. And then you might not have this, but that 50% increase, would that go online, in a month or 2 months as you see funding come through?
So it should actually, I believe it's actually within what was already
okay, got it.
with the hope that it seems like it is something that everybody can agree upon, or we could use other reprogrammings or some other savings to make sure we could fund it.
Okay. So. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, Chris Dyer does a terrific job keeping us informed on DDR and fielding questions and getting on DDOT. I would say there's a lot less.
Okay. Well, that's good feedback.
I'd say our new DDOT liaison has done a great job, but she's still new, but Commissioner Ewert did a great walk with her recently.
Okay. Good feedback.
Umar.
Bo, I think you're still on mute, or Commissioner Umar, excuse me.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes.
One question when you said about for funding for programs for affordable living, what about low income living? Never hear any funds or programs for low income living. And as far as crimes, a lot of violent crimes come from trauma in the neighborhoods, and a lot of the trauma comes from lack of programs in these neighborhoods, such as low-income neighborhoods, right? And I say that, and then sometimes when we bring these programs into the low-income neighborhoods, if it don't fit DCHA, according to some of the things that they do, some of the people get retaliated against, when they speak up, such as Sean High, such as myself as a previous president and an ANC commissioner, 1B03 that lives in public housing. We actually had a nice program called Check on a Neighbor. And that Check on a Neighbor program was an acronym, right? That meant the COIN program. And we did a nice program with it. Some of the ANC members, Amanda, just as well as Sable, they visit these garden programs that we had up on the rooftop of this Garfield Terrace building, right? Lovely program. You can see the fireworks. We did agriculture, trained, certified in it, and all that. And once seemed like I started speaking out, helping other people in other neighborhoods, came Monday, everything that we put up there from 3 years that did programs for youth, helped people off the street, we served people, we fed over 4,000 people during the pandemic, and we also did garden programs. And then to turn around, Phil Chicchio, Tuesday, I can show you the pictures. I'm like traumatized. They tore the whole program down. They tore everything down from off the rooftop without my consent. They stole and took private property from up there that belonged that was government funded through the mayor's program, through Serve DC, Commissioner Missions Continue, and from a official from the White House on Veterans Affairs. And out of nowhere, I come back Monday, they tore down the whole program. It's horrible looking up there. It looked like a hurricane hit it. And for me to live in this building, to help build the program, We have not only that, we got a 3D printing program downstairs. Not only just that, a computer lab down there, a podcast, a music studio down there, and also a veterans a kitchen down there. And for me to get locked out, I got locked out of that. They changed the keys and locked the doors. And just immediately from down housing, DCHA, they threw the stuff in the trash can. Tens and $20,000 worth of government funds that they threw away with no excuse. And I'm not the fact that I'm just the ANC commissioner. I'm a person from public housing that suffered for trauma and built this up with my own hands, our own 501c3, and certified. And you know this, you've seen this. You sat on the board and heard me explain this to you millions of times down DCHA. And you sat up in front of me today or tore our project down. I sent pictures to the ANC commissioners. Why? I mean, why? Only reason, I sat down, I was calm, collective. I only want to know, why did you destroy the program for people that can come off the streets? This can stop violence. We've been stopping violence. We've been doing a whole lot of stuff in this neighborhood. And just because we don't want it to be done your way, y'all disassembled it. That's discrimination, retaliation, disrespect. And I did nothing to none of you all. I am only serving the community. I feel highly disrespected as an individual. And I'm gonna stop, James, because I see you popped up. But it's terrible, James.
I understand. I just wanted to allow him to respond.
Yeah, so what I'll ask is, commissioners, if you do have that information, if you want to email it to me, my email address is really simple. My last name's not, but my email address is simple. So it's just John, JOHN @dc.gov. If you send me that info, I actually have a board meeting next week, so I can check in on this between now and next week. Not familiar with what happened, but definitely will look into it. And just know that, like you said, in this budget, there's money for building blocks to actually do more grants to community-based organizations to do exactly what it sounds like you described. Serve DC is really been doing that for years as well. And then also DPR, some of that $13 million, as I mentioned in my presentation up top, is actually for DPR to work with community-based organizations who already do recreational programming to make sure that they have funding as well. So there's some follow-up to do. I could hear in your voice, I don't know what happened, but I appreciate what you've done and bringing it to me tonight. And we'll follow up with the email from the commissioners.
Thank you.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, this goes back to the original of, we got to find a way of working better between on these redevelopments. There's so much misinformation and action taken by one organization that other organizations don't know about. And it really leaves people hurt in the middle. And that's absolutely what we don't want to happen. We want the best to happen for our residents. So I appreciate you looking into this.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Handrahan.
Thank you so much, Chair Turner, and great to see you again, Deputy Mayor. Thanks so much for the presentation. I also have a couple questions. I'll stick to one given the time, but did really want to put in a plug for the mayor's investments in supporting adults experiencing homelessness. I think that not only have we seen a tremendous set of successes on the family side, but for single adults, like, we know what to do, and it just costs a lot of money. And I think it's really an articulation of values to see preventative services and housing and a transformation of shelter for those individuals. So I just think that's really excellent, and want to make sure I had a chance to say that. In the DCHA updates that you gave. I didn't hear anything about the Kelly Miller apartments, and I was wondering if you could share anything on the timeline and plans there.
Yeah, and I've actually, Commissioner, got to look into that a little bit more. I did have a constituent reach out recently about some public safety concerns in the immediate area. So I do want to follow up. Actually, I might reach out to you too, just to get a little bit of background on that. And actually, to what you mentioned about our work in the human services space, one of the things that actually over the last year we're really proud of is the federal government gave resources to cities, counties, and states to help with rental assistance. The district was able to receive $352 million. We actually were able to be the first jurisdiction in the country to invest that funding into our residents completely. So $352 million. It funded 53,000 applications to make sure that people had rental assistance. So in this budget, there's actually $120 million for rental assistance to help support families and individuals to make sure that they don't get to the point of being homeless, that they don't get evicted. So there's some eviction prevention money in this budget that Mayor Bowser is proud to put forth, that $120 million to help us as we still deal with the impacts of the pandemic.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ewert.
I'm making a note to come back to you about Kelly Miller as well.
I'll shoot you an email.
Thank you.
So I have one comment and one question. I'll make my comment quickly. Just want to kind of echo the sentiments that Commissioner Vena mentioned regarding public safety. A lot of the arguments that I've seen regarding the increase in police officers to 4,000 seems arbitrary based on previous goals when crime has gone down. This is not something that is not just what we've heard, but it's supported by data. And then also regarding housing people who are unhoused, recent studies have shown that it costs more to do these community engagements, I think they're referred to, sweeping them out of encampments than it does to actually just house them. So I don't know if I buy it, just throwing that out there. My question is a little bit more detailed. It's regarding parks and these programs that you've mentioned a couple times. So I'm seeing in the budget, and this is in table HA04, I'm seeing in the budget that I see the increase for $13.5 million in general recreation programs. These are our two line items that weren't in previous years and they are now. I think I'm gonna look them up, just pull them up real quick. Specifically, they're referred to just recreational services for community recreation and recreation programs. It's about 10.6 and 2.8 million respectively. Also on that same table, it shows that there is a $5 million loss for camps, 156,000 in early childhood programs for kids 3 to 5, and 3.3 million in teens programming. That's for 13 to 18-year-olds. So my question is this an actual gain of 13.5 million, or are you shifting 8.5 million from other line items to this one and then increasing it by 5 million?
No, so the way you've got to look at this is the sources of funding as well. So we can get you sort of the information, and we'll take this as a follow-up to get you the information of DPR funding previously versus what's in the budget now. And the sources of funding matter because when the mayor sent the budget to the council for the 2022 budget cycle, she sent a $58 million investment for building blocks. When it came back to us, it was only a $28 million budget for building blocks. But what the council did wasn't cut the actual overall budget. They just changed the funding source from the ARPA dollars, which is the American Rescue Plan dollars, to local dollars or capital dollars, and they put it out in the agencies. So when you're looking at the budget, it's always important that you don't just look at one chart, but that you actually look at all of the different funding sources. So we can make sure we get to the commission the DPR budget to show how that's an actual increase to the overall budget of DPR.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Harris.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us, Deputy Mayor. I would like to also echo the comments from Commissioner Ewert and Commissioner Bena. It very much seems like we're kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks with the 4,000 number. I think we'd all appreciate kind of the data behind it and why we're aiming for 4,000 and where is that going and where we're hiring for that. What does that breakdown look like? I think my question though is more so on teacher retention. So as much as there's been flags about retention with MPD officers, there's a huge issue with teacher retention with our schools. Are there any, is there anything in the budget providing retention bonuses to teachers and signing bonuses?
Yeah, so I've got to check on the retention and signing bonuses. I do know that we've for a long time now, I think probably over 10 years, have had retention bonuses based on performance that have, capped out, I think, at $25,000. And that's done in partnership with district funding and philanthropic dollars that are raised by the DC Public Education Fund. So I've got to check and see and come back to you with a little bit more on the teacher retention and bonuses of what's new in this budget, and happy to follow up with you. I will say on the 4,000, going back to that. So like I mentioned, for about 18 months, we didn't hire any police officers. And we know from data over the last 15 years, at times where we were closer to 4,000 officers, it's where we saw a reduction in violent crime. And now we see that we're losing officers, again, 18-month period, where we weren't able to hire any. And we've seen an increase in violent crime. So how closely that correlation is probably a matter for further research. But when you look at the numbers in terms of where we were in the number of officers when we were reducing violent crime, it was closer to the 4,000 number. Now, as we see the number drop to 3,500, we see violent crime increasing to a level that we haven't seen in some time.
Are you willing to tie the MPD bonuses to performance in the same way as teacher bonuses? Because it does seem like a discrepancy that it's all about, I think that the general theme of the budget is investing in our residents, and, a lot of police officers don't live in the district. And I would hope that, when you look at those bonuses, that we're being critical and thinking about investing in our residents and investing in our kids, which starts with teachers. So
Yeah, so some of those new tools for MPD recruitment and making sure that we hire more women and more DC residents includes housing allowance for new officers, to make sure that when we hire those new officers that they actually do live in the district. So each agency director comes to the mayor with their best idea about what they need to make sure that they have what they need to get the job done. And I know that the chancellor and the chief are both not just satisfied, but excited about the investments that the mayor's made in this budget.
I think one of the challenges with MPD is I've heard that some officers don't want to be known as officers living in the community, because then everyone comes to them, they're known. So that's an issue that has to be dealt with, unlike say fire and emergency services. So the police department and I guess Homeland Security officers and things would be a little bit different in offering bonuses, but I think it's a great idea, Commissioner Bena, and should be worked into the equation. Commissioner Harris, is there any questions in the Q&A?
I do have one question from an attendee. I'm a little confused by it, but I think it's worth asking. Is there funding in the budget to cover the cost of shifting critical infrastructure from Reeds to allow for the redevelopment to go through?
Yes, absolutely. So this was something that we've worked on with our partners at DDOT and Octo. So as you probably know, and I know this commission obviously has been following this very closely, there's critical technology infrastructure for both Octo and DDOT in the Reeve Center. The original plan, when we actually worked with the community for what they wanted to see at the Reeve Center, when we went out and tried to solicit ideas from community builders, was that we would actually rebuild that critical infrastructure on site and then encapsulate it while we took down the building, while we revitalized the site. So that, though, has caused a bit of concern because this critical infrastructure doesn't have the redundancies that other critical infrastructure does. So what we've decided to do, and this is something that we've done again in coordination with DDOT, Octo, and DGS, is decided to actually rebuild that critical technology infrastructure off-site. And that will allow us then, when we're have that off-site, to actually move forward with the revitalization of the Reeve Center site with more certainty and less concern about the that critical technology infrastructure, which has been rebuilt on site. So again, we've kind of, and this budget includes the funding in order to execute this. I think you'll find it, it's either in the DGS or in the Octo budget, but that will allow us to actually move forward with more certainty on the project, and it'll allow us to get things going with Reeve Center.
Final question. You mentioned building of a new school. We've talked about redevelopment. When we start looking at DC properties, DC buildings, too often agencies think they own that property, when in fact the district government owns the property. And we end up with assets that are not fully utilized. So an example would be when we build the new school side, that maybe we do a hybrid, that the classrooms can be blocked off in the evenings and more community space for the gym and other areas. So the building could be utilized in the evening, and we don't have these silos of just wasted space in the district. I know you're keenly aware of this and how hard it is to break down the silos, but we've got to start working on that, particularly with maybe new construction is the way to do it. And starting to rethink the way, I'll go a little further here, our commercial corridors, how we manage our commercial corridors, and maybe treat them a little differently than we have in the past. Act more like a big city with very select commercial corridors and using sidewalk space and streeteries and where parking is and off-street parking and parking garages and trash gets picked up. I mean, there's just so many things that we could think a little more broadly than we have in the past and really help our city.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that we talk about, our comeback, and especially, and this is somewhat focused on downtown, but to a vibrant corridor like U Street could also apply, where we've got to fill the space, we've got to change the space, and we've got to bring back people. And in changing the space, I think it's just what you outlined here, which is really think about all the public space we have. And then we've got funding at OP for a grant. It's called Streets for People, which is actually that public roads, that public space that previously was roadway. How do we really want to reimagine it? How do we as a community want to use it to advance other goals than maybe it was during pre-pandemic times?
Thank you. Thank you for joining us this evening. I think it's been a very engaging and enlightening conversation, and thanks for covering the important issues to the administration on the budget.
Absolutely. And I'll just share again my email address if you need to follow up with me on anything. And I've got some notes here, follow-ups for myself. I know Anthony Moore will help me with that as well. But my email address, very simple, John, John, at dc.gov. Have a great night, and thanks for allowing me this time.
Thank you. Commissioners, we'll now begin our formal official session. It is 7:22. I'd like to welcome our new commissioner, Alan Kinzig from 1B05. Welcome to the commission. Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Yes. Commissioner Handerhan,
Present.
Commissioner Orlowski,
Present.
Commissioner Umar,
Present.
Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Kinsick,
Present.
Commissioner Floyd, Commissioner Ewart,
Present.
Commissioner Bana,
Present.
Commissioner Turner,
Present.
Commissioner Farnan,
Present.
Commissioner Harris, present. We have a quorum of 9 of 11.
Thank you. Commissioners, you have an agenda before you that consists with the consent agenda. Without objection, we'll move the agenda and the consent agenda.
So moved.
See no objection, the agenda is approved. Commissioner Thomas is now with us. Commissioner Bana, do you have an update on the Terrell?
Yes, just one quick update. We were sent a note by Miss Debbie, who is the social worker at the Terrell, and she wanted to, excuse me, Miss Dorothy, not Miss Debbie, I apologize. She wanted to note that on April 23rd, the local chapter of the Delta Sigma Theta sorority is going to be doing a household item drive and bringing them to the Terrell. That'll be from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and they're bringing the donations to the Terrell. So she invites the commissioners and any other community members to come for that drop off, help unload all of the items, and see the delivery of those items to the families living at the Terrell. So we'll include that. Amanda will include that information in the weekly newsletter, but just wanted to make the community aware of that happening at the Terrell on the 23rd.
Could you remind, what was the time again?
On the 23rd from 10 a.m. to noon is, I believe, when they are loading up the truck, and then I think they'll be getting to the Terrell around noon for unloading and the delivery.
Yeah, and just to clarify, 1 p.m. would be a great time for commissioners to come and like help unload and everything. 1 p.m. on the 23rd.
Commissioner Bana,
Thank you.
can you drop that information into the chat?
Yeah, I'll do that right now.
Thank you.
Commissioner, if you could also, I know this is Commissioner Floyd's district, but I think it's important, given your history and work on this, that we stay coordinate with the update to the Read It Right. And you can work with Mr. Nelson. There was a grandiose plan of how the two would relate to each other as we rebuilt Read It Right and modernized it in as a cohesive site to the short-term family housing.
Yeah, we can definitely keep the community updated. There hasn't been, the steering committee hasn't met recently, but last year there was coordination between Read It Right and the Terrell in terms of summer camps and some programming there. So I expect that will happen again this summer. I'll try and get some more firm details on that, and I can share with the rest of the commission.
This, I think, is outside the scope of the advisory group, but it's talk to Patrick. Patrick has the background there of how the two were supposed to be rebuilt together. We just could never seem to get it all on the plan at the same time. Public safety and community engagement. Commissioner Farnan.
Thanks, Chair Turner. We have Lieutenant Markowitz here, and then thank you so much for the Battalion Fire Chief, Jeffrey. Your last name escaping me, but would love to have you introduce yourself after the lieutenant. I know, Lieutenant, I think you're on the watch commander duty, so please give us a quick update, and thanks for joining tonight.
Hey, good evening. Brief update, robberies still, it's sort of been the flavor of the year. Robberies are still driving our crime, but overall we're doing pretty well. We're seeing some downward trends, which is good. We've been able to put together some good cases against some of the suspects, and we're still working with our federal partners to combat some of the issues. Up in Columbia Heights, the Columbia Heights Engagement Team, which is our new deployment initiative, has been underway for 3 or so weeks. The delay was sort of hampered a little bit by the truckers, which were pretty much all upsetting to the police department. But now that that has wound down, they've been hitting the ground. They've been making good stops. They recovered a gun up there last week. And that's, I think, pretty much the short update from me.
Great. I see Commissioner Harris's hand up. I'll let her do questions, then others, please feel free to raise your hand.
Hi, Lieutenant Markowitz. I have a few questions, mostly one, if you have any updates on shootings that took place, one on March 15th, one on February 11th, and one in December. The date is escaping me, but all along 14th and B, and if those are potentially connected.
I'd have to get back to you. Give me the dates again. March 15th.
March 15th, February 11th, and then December, it's mid to later December.
Mid to late December. All right, I'll have to track them down, and I can share with you what I can.
Okay. And then can you help me understand why the block was cleared of all observable illegal activity? Can you, and also can you define observable illegal activity?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So it was, I think, Captain Hong, and then also Councilmember Nadeau advertised that, MPD was looking into these shootings that, have happened in this short span of time, but rather than, connecting with the community or even talking with me, the block was cleared of all observable illegal activity. That was what was stated in both, I believe, in Captain Hong's email and a tweet from Councilmember Nadeau.
Gotcha. I'm not really going to speak for Captain Hong. It's also his managed area. But the shootings have sort of been found to be related to or stemmed from some of the lower seriousness, like quality of life issues, whether it be gambling or drinking in public. That has led to at least a couple of the shootings, it seems. So beyond that, Captain Hong is going to have to be the one that addresses that, because that's his area.
Yeah. I will absolutely reach out to him. I find it not very community oriented to not reach out to me as the commissioner who knows the neighbors who live and who have lived in the area for decades, and kind of trying to also understand if these are connected. So, I will speak with him about that further. My last question is, do you have any update? And again, I realize this isn't your area, but do you have any updates on a shooting that took place on December 28th on 12th Street?
No, again, that's another thing I'd have to look up. Where on 12th Street?
Between 12th, on 12th and P.
12th and P?
T as in.
T as in time.
Yeah. So the shooting, I believe, took place on 12th Street on 12th and T, but then the victim was found on 13th Street outside of, on T Street.
No, that'd be something that I have to look up, and I could email you.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, that's the one I think we spoke about in February.
Yes.
Yeah, that's still being investigated. That hasn't changed. It's still being investigated. It's open. 3 detectives have that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Commissioner Harris, for your detailed questions. I just wanted to put out for folks that Lieutenant Markowitz, thank you for responding to a community question on specific open air drug market activity that has already been investigated, but also just has been followed up with. So thank you for that. Would appreciate any written updates so that I can share with folks here, but that was specifically along 9th Street and south, kind of more south of 1B. But just for commissioners' awareness, we have correspondence on that. So if anyone has questions. And then anyone else with anything pressing? I know we're kind of trying to move along here, but great. Lieutenant Markowitz, really appreciate you being here. I know it's a busy time, but thank you.
Yeah.
And then Battalion Fire Chief, thank you so much for joining us. This is a wonderful surprise to have you on.
Yeah, you're welcome. And sorry for such a short notice, but I just
No
got
problem.
transferred to this battalion, and I wanted to take the time to introduce myself to everybody and just make you aware that I'm going to be one of the 4 battalion chiefs that are assigned to your ward, and that you can use me as a direct link to whatever questions you may have or the answers that you need to get from our executive leadership. And I'm sure the deputy mayor can reach out to them as well. But someone that's going to be pounding the streets, so to speak, in your ward, I just wanted to introduce myself. I have a short little PowerPoint that I can send to you that has all my contact information. And then I also put some fire safety stuff on there that you may want to distribute accordingly to your residents. And how you can interact with the department via Twitter, Facebook, email, if you need to get a hold of our fire prevention division regarding the free smoke detector installation and home inspection program. All that stuff's in there. So I don't want to take up too much of your time, but just wanted to say hi, and I'm glad to be here, and I'm happy to work with you and answer any of the questions that you may have. And if I don't have the answers tonight, I will surely get back to you with them.
Great. Thank you. I just put my email in the chat. I'm 1B11 and I actually have Engine 4 in my single member district. So
Okay.
know a few firefighters up there who
Cool.
ride the trucks, but would love to get to know them more and get to know you. But if you send that to me, I'll be sure to make sure everyone gets that
Okay.
information.
Yeah,
And
my office in the 4th Battalion is located at Engine 11, which
11,
is at,
okay.
3420 14th Street. So just to put that in perspective.
Great.
For some of the ward, just so good. So happy to be here. If anyone has any questions now, feel free. I'm more than happy to give you what I got.
Yeah, I
Are
see.
these
Oh, go ahead.
smoke
Sure.
Do they include carbon dioxide detectors? Or
Currently, the ones that we provide right now are not a dual function one, and we give the free ones out to individual homeowners, and they have to qualify. The information that's on the PowerPoint has a link to the website that describes the program, but if it's for single family homes, not apartment buildings, those residents have to rely on their landlord to provide the installation. But ours is for mainly private family homes. We will come within 14 days of the request that you can make online or through 311. We will schedule an appointment with the owner, come do a free home safety inspection, and then install any of the smoke detectors where we find that they would be needed.
Are there any plans to expand the program to apartment buildings? I see a big need there, especially with some of the older kind of buildings.
So we do programs through the fire prevention division that actually inspect those buildings. And our ground forces that are out there every day they show up at those apartment buildings and do an informative inspection. And if they see something that is out of the ordinary or needs adjusted, it gets transmitted to our fire prevention division, and then they'll send out an actual fire inspector and do a complete program. But those buildings are inspected every year by a fire prevention specialist. And they have to comply with the smoke detector requirements and mandates. So if they're there and the resident is asking for it, we can arrange that with their landlord, but it's their responsibility and they're the ones that are tasked with it. But we do hold them accountable and they are inspected every year. It's kind of the reason
Go ahead.
No, it's the ones that are the individual homes that we can't just go into someone's house without being invited is the thing. If you invite us to come, we're more than happy to come and give you, and you don't get fined or anything. We just give you our recommendation, and we're more than happy to install the detectors, but we can't make the homeowner comply and if it's in the individual sense. But the apartment buildings have to comply.
In pre-pandemic, Pleasant Plains Civic Association, you would come every year. And it was a very popular and important program with a lot of participants, particularly the seniors in Pleasant Plains. And I feel that we've kind of missed them the past couple of years due to the pandemic. The association hasn't met recently, but if there's a way, I believe are you on Sherman Avenue? Is that your?
But that's the area that we cover. Yeah. My office is on 14th Street, but I cover the area of Sherman Avenue. Yes.
So that area is one that could probably, we have a lot of seniors, we have a lot of older homes. If there's a way of doing hangars or something, that might be good as well.
So
Just
we,
so that we
yep.
get our senior population, our populations that have been in the area for a while.
So, and again, in our, in the PowerPoint that I sent you, there's links to all of our social media accounts. And if you look on there, there's videos now. Our fire prevention division is back in full force. We're out in the community, and they actually are scheduling areas where we call it like an all hands on deck for fire prevention. And we go and saturate that area during a day and knock door to door to try to do that. So if that's an area that you would like me to recommend to the fire prevention division to put on the list of an area to do, I would gladly do that.
Please do. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Commissioner Farnan?
Thank you so much, Chair Turner, and thank you again for joining us this evening.
Yep, you're welcome.
To the fire chief, we'll be sure to follow up with you, and perhaps we could do a walk and introduce some residents to you all.
Yeah, I'll send you the contact information in the chat.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. And then on the agenda, I just have one more item. I sent an update to all commissioners on a $1,000 sponsorship for the upcoming Funk Parade. This year, we have new leadership, new details, and a kind of new feel for the Funk Parade. We have a few attendees, I think, on here able to answer questions and just kind of give a brief update. Jessica Tichy, Commissioner Harris, if you're able to promote her just to give a quick overview. But we do have specific information if residents would like that. And then, of course, we'll be including it in the newsletter as the Funk Parade gets closer. It will be on May 7th this year. And the ANC would be proud to share a $1,000 sponsorship for events leading up to the parade and then having a table at the actual event. Commissioner Harris and I have discussed having our table on the 14th and U Street corner, kind of in partnership with that farmers market. And then, of course, there will be activations on the African American Civil War Memorial area, where I think has kind of always been the hub. With that, I will move to approve the $1,000 sponsorship for the 2022 Funk Parade.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
I did want to give Jessica some time to share details if she's able to unmute.
Absolutely.
Put it in better before the motion.
Okay.
But a quick update. Quickly,
So
what the.
you're talking 30 seconds quick?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all. I'm Jessica Tichy from the Musicianship. We are the new organizers and owners of the DC Funk Parade as of 2018. If you go to funkparade.com, I'm going to put that in the chat for everybody. Also, if you look us up on social media at DC Funk Parade, you'll see that we're actually going to have 3 live music activations. No more parade. Bye-bye parade. We loved it. We know it was a great thing that the city loved, but like I told everybody, our nonprofit just can't see ourselves spending $60,000 to give out Tootsie Rolls and beads, okay? We have larger missions in music. We have larger missions to promote the brick and mortar restaurants in the corridor, and we have larger missions as a nonprofit that point towards highlighting the resources, the nonprofits, and the co-partnering arts programs that are in the corridor. And so that is what you all will begin to see and kind of understand out of Funk Parade's programming. We're driving it back to music. We're working with the National Endowment for the Arts, DC Commission of Arts and Humanities, Events DC, OCTFME, Amazon, T-Mobile. They're all getting behind our mission to now raise funds for music and deliver the festival for free for the community, so we can all come together and do this in the spirit, history, and homage of Black Broadway. So thank you all for having me here. Funkparade.com, and all of those contact forms will lead right to me if you ever need to get in contact with us.
I just have to ask, it's Funk Parade without a parade.
That's correct. And so as soon as we close up events this year, there's actually going to be a huge rebrand to the DC Funk Festival. So please just stay in contact with us, because that'll be a whole brand movement that we do as we go into 2023. Our goal is to return a night festival that could be, another ticketed event for the corridor, continuing our legacy with Black Cat and 930 Club. And so those are some of the more longer term goals this year. Since we've been off 2 years for COVID, we're going to come back, give you 3 nice music activations from 11 to 5. We have a festival beer that we're releasing with Right Proper. It's all on the website.
Okay, we've got a little more insight into the Funk event. We have a motion. Any other discussion? All those in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions. Motion for $1,000 sponsorship approved.
Thank you so much, Chair Turner, for your support in this. And then thanks to all the commissioners for reviewing that information and for supporting that motion. Thanks, Jessica, and to Jessica's team for being here today as well. That will conclude my public safety and community engagement comments. Next meeting to be announced, likely in May. Thank you.
Thank you. ZPD, Mr. Nelson.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Patrick Nelson, and I'm the current community chair for the ZPD committee. Tonight, you have 3 items that you need to review and vote on. First item on the list is project at 513 U Street Northwest in an RF1 zone in 1B01, which is Larry Hanahan's SMD. And this is a BZA case, which came before the committee before, went to the HBR review board, and the commission originally opposed the project. So the board, on advice from myself and Larry Hanrahan's testimony, pushed it back to the committee. The applicant has had meetings with the current residents around the neighborhood. They also had a actual walkthrough with the Detroit Park Civic Association and anyone that wanted to participate. I got a lot of feedback from that. I actually attended that meeting myself. And they came back to the committee with some revisions, slight changes. Committee reviewed the process, proposal, and is making a recommendation that the full ANC support the project as proposed to HBRB, as it is now compatible with both the historic district and the immediately adjacent buildings in context.
Commissioner Henderson, is there a motion?
Sure. I motion that the full ANC support the ZPD committee recommendation to support the project at 513 U Street.
Is there a second?
I'll second, and then I also have discussion.
We have a motion that's been second. Discussion now.
So one of the reasons that this was kind of like sent back to the architects for review was because that a couple committee members felt that it was not 100% consistent with like the historic nature of the neighborhood, within the context of the neighborhood. One of the big things being the alleyway behind the house was the only way for Howard students to access Howard Hospital. Back in the day when LaJoy Park was segregated, Black students weren't able to walk through the neighborhood. And so as part of like trying to figure out a way to like, I don't want to say honor, but just like tell this story in a more complete way. Some of the committee members wanted it to kind of be facing, like be the responsibility of the applicant. And what ended up kind of like happening is that we kind of figure that this is more of like a broader discussion, and there's potentially better ways to tell this story. What I'm getting at is that I think it would be worthwhile. I don't know if at the next meeting, but maybe in a future meeting at the Transportation Committee, that we kind of have a discussion where we talk about like ways that this alleyway, which is a public right of way, can be, I don't know if outfitted is the best word, but just find a way to tell this story in a way that most people know about it. I grew up in DC and did not know about it, and I think it's a shame that that is the case. So I'm telling this to you, Commissioner Handerhan, that at a later date, we'll have a Transportation Committee meeting. This will be on the agenda, and we can kind of have a deeper conversation about like what this looks like.
I'd love to join, and if I could just add two other pieces of context to this site. I also live on this alley, so I'm pretty familiar with the situation. This alley abuts what will eventually be the redevelopment of the hospital site that was referenced in the deputy mayor's presentation earlier tonight. Correct. I do think the historic nature of this space where the fence was that segregated the community for a couple decades is a really important consideration to take into account. And I will say also, separate from the history of the alley, this was a project that it's a good project. It's like someone who lives in their house who's trying to expand it to make it work for their family. Like really support that with all of the gentrification that's pushing folks out. The community engagement didn't happen the way it was supposed to. It was sent back to the community, and the design that came out of it, everyone really likes. And so I think it's a good example too of like when community engagement, in this case with the LaJoy Park Civic Association and, in support of the ZPD committee and the SMD, like we get a better product. It didn't stop the development. The owner's getting what the owner wants, the neighborhood's getting what they want. And I think people can walk away happy. So I just want to say that.
Max, I'm just going to suggest, which was not brought up in the ZPD, that you guys on the Transportation Committee, as a first round item, is think about possibly getting the city to name the alley. That's the first thing you should look at, and then continue with the discussion that we had about some kind of plaque or some kind of other thing. But I think naming the alley is the first step that you should address.
I wonder too, Commissioner Ewart, if there's something because Deputy Mayor brought up kind of the alley revitalization piece. So I wonder if there's something there that we can also utilize. I'm also curious from the perspective of like Temperance Alley in my SMD, but I think that might, I would love to join that conversation if I can, but also wondering, how do we take it further with the new items in the budget?
Yeah, I'd be happy to reach out and include you guys on any conversations that happen.
Is this a vehicular alley or a pedestrian alley?
It's a vehicle alley.
Is it, do you know if it's brick or?
I think it's brick.
It's brick, but there's been there's a lot of other things going on there too, like repairs over the years. It's kind of a mess. We're hoping that it gets some TLC as part of the hospital redevelopment.
I think we lost James.
Well, that ended our discussion. I think Commissioner Harris, if you want to just take a vote then, and then we can go on to the next one. Oh, here he is.
Here he comes.
Chair Turner, we're waiting for the vote.
Oh, there he is.
I guess at some point I'm going to have to get that new battery for my laptop.
Yeah, we finished the meeting already, James, so you can go.
All right, thanks. So have you voted on the item?
No, we were waiting for you to come back.
I just had a couple more questions on this alley. Since you want to make it into something and it's currently a vehicular used alley, you probably want to do a naming, do a ceremonial naming, not an address naming. Ceremonial
I meant
naming.
by ceremonial to be part of the history. Yes, that's what I was thinking.
And then to do the plaque, there's a way of including it in some of the neighborhood walks. So it gets built into one of the paths, and there's a process for doing that. Where they actually evaluate it and they will make it into part of the historic walk. So I think that would be useful to do as well. Commissioner York, when you consider that at your committee. All those in favor of the HPRB, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
I
think we lost.
think Chair Turner's frozen.
Those opposed? Those abstaining?
Yeah, so those opposed, I think that was none, but
None.
anyways. So the motion passes
9-0.
9-0. Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on since James is in transition. The next item on the agenda is a project located at 408 410 T Street Northwest. It's also in 1B01, which is Larry Hanrahan. This is an HPRB case. This is the Walter Washington property that Howard University owns, and they are converting the building with a small addition into 4 residential units that will be used by the university only for staff and visiting people. So this project, the ANC is recommended to support as designed with the addition of the front porch and the rear addition. It further recommends to the board it support 2 different colors for each of the building facades. And if the development team finds it feasible to restore or retain the rear porch on 408, it supports that change too.
Thanks. Commissioner Handerhan, do you have any comments?
Another example of a project in 1B that I feel like everything worked the way it should. We are thrilled that Howard is redeveloping one of the most prominent properties in LaJoy Park. We love the usage, the changes that came out of the conversation. I'm speaking on behalf of the community here. I think the changes that came out of the ZPD conversations, I think are minor to on one hand, but will make a real difference on the experience of this building in the neighborhood. And this is a project that could have gone in a lot of really different ways. And I'm just so pleased that it's gonna be back in use in the community in the way that it is. So I would encourage everyone to fully support it. And I would make a motion if that's appropriate.
Before we do that, does anyone else have any questions or comments? No. Okay, you can go ahead with your motion.
Okay, I motion the full ANC support the ZPD committee recommendation as it relates to the Walter Washington House.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those opposed, please make yourself known. Or not hearing any abstentions. No, motion passes 6-0. Okay, Patrick, next item on the list. I believe you have one more, Euclid Street.
Just for transparency purposes, the 408, 410 had a second part that was also brought up in our meeting that relates to a BZA request that has to go through a different channel. That was supported, but is not coming in front of the commission tonight because they have not finalized their application. I spoke with her this morning, and that should be happening momentarily, but the hearing is not going to be for a couple of months, so we're not delayed. I just want to let everyone know that second part of that will probably come next month. So the last item tonight is an item at 1208 Euclid Street Northwest. It's an NRF1 zone. It's in 1B03, which is Bose SMD. This is a BZA case. The applicant is requesting special exception relief from the rear addition requirements, the lot occupancy requirements, and the rear yard requirements to construct a rear addition and accessory garage to an existing 3-story cellar principal dwelling unit in the RF1 zone. So the committee reviewed the plans and discussed this item and is recommending that the ANC support the special exceptions for this project, which include the rear yard, lot occupancy, and rear addition.
Looks like Chair Turner is back, but while he gets himself situated, I'll just ask if there are any comments from Commissioner Umar.
No, I checked it out. I went past the house and looked at it myself. I agree. I approved it. I agreed on it.
Do we have any questions from the rest of the commission? All right, not hearing any. Do we have a motion?
I motion to support the CPD committee's recommendation.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? And abstentions? All right, the motion passes 8-0 with, I believe, one abstention. Is that it, Patrick?
That's it.
That's it, okay.
Meeting is on April 18th.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Let's move on to economic development.
Hi, everyone. Larry Henderhan, 1B01. Good to see everyone. I want to acknowledge that we have a couple of the Economic Development Committee members on the line, so thank you. Best committee around. We also have Alex Padro from Shaw Main Street on the line. No specific presentation, but if anyone has any questions related to the Shaw Main Street, please feel free to ask it as part of this update. I just want to provide a few updates. Most of these topics we talked about at our March meeting. First off, the U Street Main Street is looking for a new manager. I will drop the link in the chat if you know anyone who might be interested. That's managed by District Bridges, and they said as of earlier this week that they still don't have a candidate. All the information is posted online. I also think people generally know, or I think a lot of the commissioners at least know, that the Washington Improv Theater is seeking a new home. So they lost their lease at Source. And I think if anyone has any leads for them, we've tried to support them to stay in the neighborhood. They've been in 1B for a long time. Want to provide a few updates on development projects I know this group is super engaged in. We talked about the Reeve Center already and some of the critical infrastructure changes that need to happen before development can start. We did hear an update from DemPed at our last meeting and have also since heard that we expect the best and final offer to come out relatively soon, hearing in the next couple weeks, but we'll stay tuned for that. I'll make sure this group knows. They believe that tenants will start being relocated around the end of the summer through 2023. For the Grimke site, which I know is very familiar to folks who have been long-term observers of 1B, the space is finished. Jordi Gallis has moved in and 50% of the condos are sold. The African American Civil War Memorial Museum is going to be moving into their space midsummer. Those are all the bright spots. Unfortunately, there's still no tenant for the U Street part of the property, which is commercial. And also the art space hasn't been filled. That was a real central community resource there. So still ongoing efforts there. And if anyone has any leads, I know the developer and the community would be very appreciative. Commissioner Lasky, I know you've been really involved. So please jump in if you have anything further to say.
I don't have any updates on the art space, but I do know that the problems with the U Street commercial space are still ongoing. One of the main concerns from the neighborhood now is that the developers might want to sort of go back on their agreements that they had originally made with the community to not bring in a bar or a restaurant. So that's still kind of remains to be seen, but it's something that I'm closely monitoring.
I think was the community okay with the restaurant? It's just not a tavern license. Is that what it was?
Well, no, they would prefer there to not be anything that would create trash or noise. A bar would be right out the window, but a restaurant, even in most cases, would probably not be okay. I mean, they might be okay with certain types if it's like a small scale cafe or something, but they didn't want anything that was going to cause, because the space that they're going into doesn't have an easy access in the back for trash. Like it'd essentially be in the alley. So they're trying to avoid that as a issue. They were hoping for something more like a retail space.
Got it.
Or a cafe. They'd be okay with that too, because it'd be quieter. But generally speaking, they didn't want anything that would be creating traffic or noise or garbage.
They're hiring a new firm to do the search, given the 3 years. Well, the pandemic, you're not going to get a lot of tenants during that period. It's a small space. It's right next to Nellie's.
Yeah. It's a weirdly laid out space too, from what I understand.
I just also want to clarify, when we say the community, it's specifically, there's petitions from the neighborhood association. So I don't know if it's wider, how wide that is. And Larry, they came to the ABR committee last month or the month before, and I can share with you, I should have done that earlier. Should have shared with you the letter and the petition that they sent us. So I can give it to you and you can share it with economic development.
It's Westminster, right? Westminster Neighborhood Association?
Yeah, it's Westminster and sort of the extended, what I like to sort of think of as the extended Westminster Neighborhood Association, which includes the 9th Street, 9.5 Street people. They're not technically in Westminster, but they tend to engage with each other quite a bit.
It's the Jeff Willis group around.
Yeah, the Jeff Willis group, yes. And Chris Shriver.
Yeah, the folks on the alley, we have heard, we've heard from them as well. It'd be great to get what you mentioned, Commissioner Vena. Moving on, just for the sake of time, we are tracking developments with 815 Florida Ave, which is the DC Housing Finance Agency. They are hoping to join us at our April meeting, which is April 21st at 6:30 to talk more about the plans for that site. Also want to mention that we're expecting an RFP for the MPD site at 1617 U Street coming this fall. So there's a lot of action happening on the corridor when it comes to these district-owned or pseudo-district-owned properties. And I'm really thankful for the committee members who have been digging into all these projects.
As a possible tenant at Grimke, they're looking at Metro, the gay lesbian group that has to move from Reeves, as that possibly being a permanent home. They do have $1 million in the budget for space build out.
And thank you, James. If there's, I was actually going to turn to you if there's anything else that I missed with all the different projects.
You have a new shot spotter on top of Grimke. if anyone wants to get excited about that one. They have a new tenant moving into the office space at Grimke, so that's going to add 25 new daytime jobs to the community. WIT was going to go in there, but they are part of Cultural DC where they lost their lease, so that's a complicating factor. We've got some fillers out to try and help them with any leads from other space that we may have worked on. Nothing.
I think we lost James again. I think I can make sure to communicate anything else that doesn't get updated. I think we should probably move on. Our next meeting is Thursday, April 21st at 6:30, and you can register on anc1b.org.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hanrahan. We'll move on to the Transportation Committee. We don't have any votes, right? We don't have anything to vote on today?
No votes, although if there were questions from the community, I would want to give just like a quick
sure,
pause,
we can take a okay, sure.
or other commissioners. Yeah.
So
I don't see any questions coming through, so we can go ahead and move on.
Okay, great. Transportation, Commissioner Ewart.
So slow month this past month. No items to vote on. Just going to mention that our next meeting will be next Wednesday, April 13th at 7 p.m. If you're interested in coming, we got a number of items that are coming up on the agenda, a couple of resolutions regarding some priority bus lanes and stuff like that. So feel free to stop on by. For the commissioners who are impacted directly, I'll be sure to reach out and make sure you're aware, and before just adding you as a panelist on the committee meeting. Yeah, no other updates for me on the Transportation Committee.
Okay, thank you. I guess our next committee is ABR Committee. It's Commissioner Baina.
Okay, so I have some updates. We have one thing that requires a vote. So first up, we'll just get that vote out of the way. That is a settlement agreement amendment. It is Exum Restaurant and soon to be coming to 9th Street Ethiopian Restaurant at 1934 9th Street Northwest. That's in 1B02, your SMD, Commissioner Orlowski. Folks who pay attention to the ABR Committee will recall that we approved this settlement agreement as a full ANC either last month or the month before, I can't recall. But in addition to the ANC discussions with this restaurant, there was a group of 5 protests from the abutting property, condo property to where this restaurant is coming. And so that settlement agreement has been amended slightly, and we need to approve that. Commissioner Orlowski, do you have any details or feedback on that you want to speak on?
Yeah, sure. So the amendments to the settlement agreement that we approved and that was sent to Abra are very minor. Essentially, they just involve a few additional requirements of the business to make sure their doors remain closed if they have any kind of live music, or and also that they would have to serve food up until 30 minutes before closing. There was a little bit of additional language that Abra added themselves because they require it. It's not really that important. I also circulated the settlement agreement, amended settlement agreement just recently. This was something that came across my attention only yesterday, so I apologize for the short notice. However, it's kind of important that we get it voted on tonight, because if we don't, then the protest will go forward and there are hearings that are scheduled. And if we can get a vote done tonight, they won't have to do any of that. It'll be closed.
Great.
Is there a motion?
Yes, I move that we accept the settlement agreement for Axum Restaurant with the amendments provided by the restaurant and the protestants from the group of 5.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions. Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, so we do not have any other votes to take today. However, I want to make the community aware that for the 28 attendees that have stuck with us, that it is renewal season for Abra licenses. So in DC's infinite wisdom, the way that they do things is they make all of one type of license due at the same time. So March 31st, all of the restaurant Class C restaurant licenses and multi-purpose licenses were all due for renewal. So we have a little bit of a flurry of renewals that are before us. So I'm going to read off some ones that we will likely be in attendance at our April meeting. The other interesting thing that is, as opposed to the standard placards issued by Abra, where they include the establishment's contact information, the renewal applications, which are auto-generated by Abra's system, do not have any contact information, which adds an extra layer of research and hoops to jump through to get them to come to the meeting. So I did just want to note that we are hoping to have at the April meeting in 1B02, Commissioner Orlowski's district, VIP Lounge, Lulu's Wine Garden, and the Right Spot. Those are all renewals. Additionally, 1942 DC has a substantial change application. That's the second time they've filed it, and they will be in attendance as well. In 1B04, we will be having Franklin Hall attending. They aren't up for renewal till later this year, but before that renewal period, they want to amend their settlement agreement. Commissioner Thomas has said that she's supportive of that, but they will be coming to the meeting to discuss. And then from 1B12, Commissioner Harris's district, Black Cat, which is one of those multi-purpose licenses. It's a music venue. So those are up before us in April. I'll have Amanda include those in the upcoming newsletter on Tuesday. I also just wanted to note that, again, right now we have a small flurry of the restaurant licenses, but later this year, in September, all of the CT licenses, that's the tavern licenses, so that's all the bars and nightclubs, will come due. And so that can be a somewhat chaotic time. And when we review those, we want to incorporate community feedback on our website, and also linked in the agenda here tonight. We have a community feedback form where you can give feedback about any Abra licensed establishment in your area, whether it's noise, whether it's trash, some other sort of complaint, whether it's a compliment, talking about how great of a neighbor they are. You can log that feedback, and then that way we have that when we are combing through the inundation of license renewal applications, and that way we can prioritize making settlement agreements and protesting ones that have caused community concern. So just wanted to make that aware. Go to our website, to the committee page, and use that feedback form. I also want to note that at our April meeting, we are going to have a jam-packed agenda. In addition to those renewals I mentioned, we have previously booked an investigator from Abra who is going to attend. We've had a lot of questions from community members, members of the committee, about how Abra investigation and enforcement works, and in some folks' opinion, lack of enforcement. So we want to ask some questions, get some more information, know what is in the parameters of Abra and what is not. That is my update. I'll mention that next meeting is Wednesday, April 20th at 7 p.m. And even though it is 4:20, we do not have any of the medical or recreational dispensaries on the agenda. Despite the attention that's gotten in the council, we're going to keep it that way. I don't want to get into those discussions on the next meeting. We've got a jam-packed agenda. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Let's now go to administrative items. We have a vacancy in 1B10. The petition period is from 4/11 until 5/2. Challenge period 5/5 to 5/11. It's been published in the DC Register. We've had a discussion before of in-person virtual and hybrid meetings. There's been a survey of commissions to get an opinion of what they would like. Overwhelmingly, it's been to be virtual across the city. This would be something the council would have to approve in their updating legislation. We have sponsored or said that we would like a hybrid to do virtual and in person, to have that option through the year on a set schedule and a set schedule. And it's been different by area. It's been the ones who are opting for virtual say that they're getting better attendance because of people not wanting to travel during the evening hours. And I understand that. That's also why we tend not to get some residents at our meetings, and also the location. For our committees, although the legislation doesn't particularly call out committees, I suggested that we would like to allow our committees to be the commission and the committees decide whether they're virtual or in person or a hybrid outside of the ANC meetings. So we'll see what the council does with that legislation. Let's do a poll of the commissioners present if they would like all in person, all virtual, or hybrid meetings.
All in person for sure.
If you would like all in person, raise your hand. One person. All virtual. All virtual. No votes. A hybrid of in-person and virtual. Okay. I think we continue to say that we'd like hybrid in person. What we need to do is set a firm schedule for that. And adhere to it and get to space. We were having some difficulty in doing the April because of the uncertainty of the requirements of the space for masking and social distancing, given that we meet at the Housing Finance Authority. We've now cleared that up and we are able to return there for our meetings. Is there a suggestion of the first month of each quarter as an in-person meeting? Or how does anyone have an opinion?
Can I suggest that maybe you send us a proposed schedule of what months would be virtual, what would be in person, and then we could discuss and approve it. I think that it doesn't necessarily make sense to have a regular thing, when there are maybe certain months that make more sense, such as around the holidays or something like that, to be virtual. So that's what I would propose if we could hash that out on paper.
Okay, and since that is up to us to decide, actually, our bylaws, I believe, allows it to me to decide when and where our meetings are outside of the schedule. So I'll take that to our executive committee, and if we could put something together, circulate it for comment of a poll, and we can vote on it that way. Is that acceptable?
I think that would be great. And I've plugged before. I don't know if we've made any progress there or what other ANCs are doing, but if there is some way to ensure that we are, when we do meet in person, that we have some sort of live stream option or potentially some way to get interaction from virtual people. I think you made a good point earlier that virtual helps some people participate and it's a barrier for other people. So to the extent that we can give as many ways to participate as possible, I'm in favor of that.
By having virtual meetings, we're getting more participation outside the U Street corridor. When we're in person, it's almost exclusively U Street corridor. So this is good, and I think the committees have probably proved that out as well. Okay, redistricting. I had asked Commissioner Farnan to gather comments from commissioners and to draft a response to the subdistricting committee on one, do you want to redraw any of the SDs that are in the proposed map? Not breaking any census blocks. Support for the move of the triangle at the end of U Street from 1C to 1B so that the economic development and the U Street corridor and all the issues and concerns and the neighborhood concerns of the U Street corridor are in one ANC. And a discussion around the, for lack of a better term, I'll call it the Whole Foods Triangle that is currently slated to move to 1E, I think. That the Santiago had made a dissent and is gathering input for that to be returned to 1B as part of 1B. Commissioner Farnan, do you have an update on your letter, draft letter?
I don't think Commissioner Farnan is available, but as Chair Turner stated, I think we should direct any questions to her and probably soon. I have a question on the track to try to unify at least the parts of Ward 1 to U Street. Was there any, I guess, dissent that you could share from the redistricting committee about that?
The poll that we did showed a little over 50% in favor of it being part of U Street and consistent with U Street, much like the discussion of LaDroit Park. There was some dissent that traditionally had been part of Adams Morgan and you should not move it because it's been part of Adams Morgan, which is never a good argument for me. It does seem to be more in line with U Street, and as the redevelopment on U Street occurs, there will naturally be the same concerns of traffic, trash, noise, all the issues that are dealt with as a commercial corridor. So it makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does.
You may remember during the ward redistricting that there was an argument to move it to Ward 2 because they considered it part of DuPont Circle.
Well, it was also the argument to move the part of U Street back to Ward 1. And I think that makes a lot more sense, but here we are. I think, I mean, as a commissioner that has, at least for now, the part that I guess abuts a lot of this section. First, I was a little hesitant to have it separately as a completely different kind of SMD, but now kind of looking at the map a little bit more, I think it makes a lot of sense. It is a bit of a different part of U Street in that, you know, there's not a lot of nightlife. There's not, you know, there's, it's a little bit more residential. But I think for what you pointed out, Chair Turner, I think it does make sense to be a part of the same commission because it's similar challenges with kind of the redevelopments of like FEMS and Third District. There are going to be similar challenges of what we're facing with the Reeves Center or with the housing finance or other ones that are on U Street.
Thank you. It's important that this letter get into the subcommittee. Given that it needs to be done before our next commission, I would suggest that we appoint a subgroup to draft, circulate, and send, finalize and send to the subcommittee of input. And I would suggest that it be Commissioner Orlowski, Commissioner Farnan, and one additional person. Particularly since we're going to talk, the letter should talk about redrawing SMDs if you wish to make them less oddly shaped.
Question. So would it make sense for me to be part of it? My thinking is that having balance between like commissioners whose single member districts would remain in 1B. I know Commissioner Farnan's would not, mine also would not with most of these proposals. I just wanted I just think contextually it makes a little bit more sense to have more than the majority of those working on this be commissioners who are remaining in the who will likely remain in the ANC.
How about Commissioner Hander?
Yep.
As a one who will remain in an area that was part of contention, and it continues the argument of the little triangle.
Yep.
There's also Commissioner Baina, who you probably noticed that I will no longer be part of 1B, and that I will be potentially handing the 1B09 off to Commissioner Baina, which makes me very proud.
Commissioner Baina, unless you have a strong feeling, I'm happy to do it. I'm also happy to defer to you.
You can go ahead and do it. I don't have an opinion. I kind of like the map as is.
Okay.
I would encourage you, if you ever want to join the redistricting group in the future, don't. What I thought was going to be a fairly mathematical exercise of drawing things turned out to be anything but. But it did give me an opportunity to hear lots of varying opinions and perspectives of how districts are drawn and ANCs are created, especially when a poll showed that something like 30% of the population even know or care about ANCs.
Wow, that's like 25% higher than I would have guessed.
Chair Turner, Santiago mentioned that the next subcommittee meeting is April 28th, and it would be helpful to have the letter before then.
Oh, Santiago would be a good addition to the group to help with particularly any redrawing that you want to do. He's become quite skilled in using the rather difficult mapping tool. Okay, so it looks like Handerhan, Santiago, who else? Amanda. There was a little method to my madness on Amanda, since she does work with staff on council, as well as helping to make sure that things get in the right track for consideration. Okay.
I believe I was the other one, but
you were the other one. Yes.
If anybody else wants to do it, that's okay too.
And this to draft this letter, it needs to be done quickly. If you get it drafted, circulate it around, get it in. We don't know what the subcommittee is going to do, but they need to move quickly on all 8 wards. And then it's important then that they can draw the boundaries, which have to be defined in verbiage, by the way, for each SMD and put into statute. And that takes some time. And then it goes to Bega to then create the voter rolls for candidates, which will start in August. So there's a lot of work to be done between now and getting ready for the candidates in August to be elected in November and seated in January. Kind of a note to all, we've become a little lax in our administrative duties and getting items in for the agenda. And this is something that we need to discuss in our administrative meetings, which we probably should revamp, maybe not every week, but on a set schedule. Commissioner Lasky, would you take lead in let's getting those established again? Also, let's on the first one, let's use it as a way of doing orientation for our new commissioner.
Sure.
To talk
happy
about
to.
the various operations of the ANC.
Yeah, happy to.
Any questions on any of those items? I don't see Ms. Davenport online. Office of the Mayor, we have Director Irving of the MOCAS with us.
Good evening, and thank you all so much for this opportunity. For all of our neighbors on, Anthony Moore continues to be your faithful servant, and I will not allow the deputy mayor to steal him, even though Anthony is over his 2-year mark, but I'm sure that Anthony sends his greetings. Just want to invite you guys out this coming Saturday, April 9th at 12. We will have an unveiling of She Will Rise mural. And again, that's going to be at 14th and S Street Northwest. And so we're really hopeful that you all will come out. It's in honor of our Supreme Court Justice. So we are very hopeful that you all will come out to see the unveiling of She Will Rise mural on Saturday, April 9th from 12 to 2 p.m. As many of you all know, twice a week, Anthony is in the community proactively looking for different city concerns that he can elevate to our city partners to ensure that your standard and quality of life is maintained. And over this past week, Anthony has done a lot of work in 1B. And so actually on Monday of this week, he joined DBH, HIPS, and the Latin American Youth Center to do an engagement meeting to talk about the Opioid Awareness Day, because we know that opioids is causing a lot of havoc in our city. Additionally, Anthony did, actually tomorrow, I guess it'll be Moises, he'll be doing a public health outreach walk with our partners at DBH, again, to just put eyes on what the issues are. So again, the city can proactively begin to create a strategy to engage those populations that could benefit most from it. Anthony conducted a sweep in 1B03, 1B01, and 1B0. Yeah, no, he was just in 1B01 and 1B03, and he's noted over 23 city services that are needed to include potholes, illegal dumping, parking signs, and damaged parking meters. And so again, this is just an opportunity to share with our neighbors. Mokers, we not only walk with commissioners, we also walk with our neighbors. And so if you would like to do a walk with Anthony so that he can see the community from your vantage point, and or commissioners, if you would like to do a walk with Anthony so again, he can see it from your vantage point, please do not hesitate to reach out to him to do so. And again, on behalf of Deputy Mayor Falchicchio and Mayor Muriel Bowser, we thank you all so much for the opportunity to present today. And I will put my information as well as Anthony's information in the chat so that if anyone has any questions, you can reach out to us directly. And one last thing, Commissioner Handerhan, myself and Anthony, we've been working very closely with DMHHS, and the mayor is paying very close attention to our encampment issues. We actually took a tour of all of our encampments in the District of Columbia, and Mayor Bowser has advised DMHHS that they have, I think now they're at 20 days, to provide her with a plan of action and a status on engagement at all of those encampments. So I'm hopeful that it addresses some of your concerns. And thank you all again.
Thank you. Councilmember Nadeau's office. I don't see Oscar. Commissioners, announcements? Commissioners, any announcements? Any community announcements? Commissioner Harris, Commissioner Farnan, anything in the community announcements?
I'm
There's
not seeing
nothing-
anything in the Q&A or
Chat.
chat at this point.
Okay, is there any new business? Hearing none, we will adjourn until our next monthly meeting. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
You.
Thank you. Good night.